It's connecting. Yeah. All right, we're live, folks. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining in tonight. It's been a couple weeks. It's been more than a couple weeks for me, but let's go round robin. And Bill, let's start with you. What's new with you? What you been up to?
I got some bird feeders for the new house. I've become a bird nerd. So I've been kind of having fun watching out my kitchen window, seeing all these different birds, until all these blackbirds came in, and I've had to refill it every other day. Aside from that, waiting for this rain to break so we can fish the creeks. And man, oh man, even the Saginaw River, it's high, it's muddy, everything. The weather we've had lately has just been terrible.
You seen any birds around those bird feeders that don't necessarily fly and are starting to fan out a little bit?
So I've had my group, the little neighborhood group, come through, but I'm starting to see them, drive around for work, out poking out on the field edges, mid mornings. You're starting to see more groups, definitely in Saginaw County, Bay County area, Midland County, around in there, and slowly but surely, and it seemed like a light switch. One day, bam. Whoa, there's birds all over, and ever since then. So hopefully that just continues to heat up from here on out.
Right on. Yeah. Dennis, what you been up to? You've been doing a little bit of fishing, I see.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, I'm sorry. My connection was a little squirrely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
we're just asking what you've been up to.
Just avoiding the raindrops when I can and getting out there and doing a little crappie fishing first, and then couldn't stand it no more and had to go out there and mess with them bass. It's been a lot of fun. 37 panfish on Saturday. Had to weed through a whole bunch of little dinky ones to just get a few on the stringer to get home. But it's still a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you caught a couple nice ones there for sure, and some good bass too. It looked like. How big were those bass you caught?
My biggest one of that day was 19. Yeah, got 19. I forget what all. 19, and I think it's 17, and a couple smaller that were about 15 or so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Robert, you've been busy working from what I can see. What you been up to? Tell everybody what's been going on.
Yeah, I'm just getting ready for, well, we got spring turkey coming up, which I always do the May hunt, but pretty much getting lure painting off the ground and staying busy with that. And if I'm not slinging paint, I'm getting ready for turkey season at this point. I've actually got
a lot of activity.
With
birds yet, or
it's been kind of hit and miss. Like a couple of the areas that are normally really, really good have been kind of, I don't know, there's birds there, but they're not there. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting season, but in the same hand, it's still kind of early for when I'm out there. And I mean, we got not quite a month left to go, but close to a month before I'm even thinking about setting foot in the woods and chasing them.
Yeah.
That's all right. Me and Tim will take up that slack.
Right. Yeah. How many days till turkey season, Dennis? I know you got the countdown.
Too many. I forget. I'm wanting to say like 9 or 10 days or something like that. Thinking 9. Something like that.
It's getting close.
Yeah, can't wait.
Well, we all got bird brain going on right now, but when aren't we thinking about deer hunting though at the same time? So tonight we have Calvin Dennis joining us tonight, and we're going to talk about maybe when the shot doesn't go necessarily as planned or that tracking job's a little bit tougher. So joining us from Scent Hunter Tracking, we got Calvin Dennis. Calvin, welcome aboard.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, we appreciate you joining us tonight. So this will be a fun topic because I know I've never had experience with a tracking dog before, and I don't believe the other guys have here too. So I'm sure with all sorts of questions on what it's all about and what all it takes to get those dogs ready and what the track looks like. So Calvin, if you would tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, you're an outdoorsman. We see some antlers behind you and some different things. So tell us about your experience in the outdoors, what you love to do.
Yeah, so I appreciate it again having me on. I own Scent Hunter Tracking, which is a service for hunters for tracking wounded game, specifically mostly deer, but we do track a few bears. And again, it's wounded bears because our dogs are not trained to chase down bears. That's just not what we do. But born and raised in northern Michigan, lived here my entire life. Grew up hunting and fishing, did a lot of hunting and fishing over the years. And as most trackers do, had that scenario where I shot a deer that was less than ideal and had a dog come out. And once I watched that dog work on that line and just the experience that I had, boy, it really hooked me. And so that's kind of where I'm at today. Got into it, and I've actually got 2 tracking dogs now. You probably see a little bit of a black tail wandering around back in there, but this is one of them here. This is Scout. If you can see his face, he's not going to really pay attention much, but
There he is.
Yeah, so like I said, done a lot of hunting and fishing over the years and just really enjoy the outdoors. And this is just another avenue for me to get out, especially with the training purposes. That's just another way for us to get out throughout the entire season and do a bunch of training and just enjoy the outdoors. Of course, don't get me wrong, you guys are talking about turkey hunting. I've got turkey hunting on the mind too. So
Right. Awesome. Yeah. So tell us what area that you're out of and whereabouts you can actually go to help somebody if they need to track a deer or a bear or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. So specifically, my service that I have is out of Benzie County, which is that northwest portion of Michigan. I cover a fair amount of counties, and I say I cover them. If I have a hunter that calls me that needs help and I'm not busy at that time and place, then by all means, I'll be willing to drive. So a lot of the times I cover Benzie County, Manistee County, Leelanau County, Grand Traverse, Lake, and Mason. And those are, probably the portion of most of them. I do a few in Wexford County from time to time, but I'm willing to travel. It's all dependent on the time of the year. When we get busy as trackers, during that rut time when it really gets amped up and the deer are moving pretty heavily. I mean, we as trackers can take anywhere from 30 to 60 calls a day. And that's a lot of calls, and that's a lot of hunters looking for service. And so you kind of have to prioritize, where you're going and which tracks you're able to take. And it's a distance game for me. And that's just because I've got such a large area that I cover.
Right. Yeah. So,
Nice.
the very first question that popped in my head is if you love hunting and you're busy tracking deer, you're getting 30 plus calls a day. Like, when do you find time to hunt for yourself?
Right. I was thinking
you really got to prioritize that. Yeah. So, I kind of traded one for the other. I still enjoy deer hunting, don't get me wrong, but there's just something about helping somebody that has literally exhausted all efforts trying to find their deer, and they call you up and you bring your dog out. And most people laugh. I'll bring Willow up here in a little bit. You probably see her, but she's 23 pounds. She's a Parsons Russell Terrier, and it's hilarious when I get to a track and I pull her out of the truck and guys kind of literally laugh at me and say, "Are you sure that's the dog that you're going to use to track my deer?" But to the point of those people have exhausted all efforts. They've done everything they possibly can to try to find that deer. And then for me to take the dog out there and allow them to find their deer and have that moment of maybe it's their biggest buck, maybe it's their first deer ever. There's just something to be said about that. So It's a little bit of a trade-off for me, but honestly, I think right now in my point in time, I think I enjoy tracking more than I do deer hunting. Now, don't get me wrong, I still like to climb up in the tree. And I was very fortunate this last season to harvest 2 very, very nice deer for Northern Michigan. So I can't complain about that.
Nice.
Here we go. There's a monster.
Okay. What's the dog's name? I'm sorry.
That's Willow.
Willow. Okay.
Yeah.
That we had a dog just like that growing up named Charlie. Almost the exact looked like it could be that dog's twin pretty much. So that's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
the other dog looked like it was a lab.
Actually, he's a Louisiana Catahoula.
Okay.
It's the state dog for Louisiana. They were bred down in Louisiana back in the early 80s for hog hunting.
Oh wow.
Yep.
So all right, so I guess that let's start with this. So did you go out did you have those dogs prior to getting into this, or did you get those dogs after, you decided you wanted to take this up?
Yeah, so I actually the first dog, which was Willow, the smaller one, that was actually the first dog that I got, and I specifically got her for deer tracking. I did a little research prior to, and it was just kind of figuring out what breed is going to fit my family and what breed is going to be something that I was willing to put in my house. Because let's face it, we're only tracking 3 months of the year, and so I need a dog that's going to live in my house the other 9 months. Yeah. And so that was one of the things that I kind of looked at. Parsons Russell Terriers, similar to a Jack Russell, they use them a lot over in Africa for big game tracking. And so I kind of took that as maybe a sign that that's something that I'd want to, look into. And I did do that. And it was really funny when we went to the breeders to pick out the puppy that I wanted. I actually asked the breeder, do you mind if I bring a deer leg in and just kind of let it, be around the dogs? And I set it down on the middle of the floor, and about 3 of them came around it. And I picked it up and I moved it about 5 feet, and I set it down, and 2 more followed it. And I picked it up again, and I walked towards the door with it. And Willow was the only one that continued to find me. And so I just decided that was the one I wanted. And to this day, I mean, she's been a fantastic dog. She's really figured out the game of tracking. But the early years, it took me a lot of strides to try to figure out what I was doing. And that's just kind of the trial and error deal. And getting partnered up with some people that know what they were doing prior to, that had some experience, that really made a big difference for me. So I've been able to train both dogs now. And then I decided, one of the biggest factors is that, as you guys know, throughout the entire state, there's a lot of different terrains that we have. And you can probably imagine a 23-pound Parsons Russell trying to get through a downfall dead swamp, or a 4-foot tall switchgrass field, or, whatever the scenario may be. There was some factors there that I just knew that maybe weren't ideal. And so I decided at that point in time that it was a good idea to get another dog that was a little bigger. And our call volume's gone up quite a bit. Since my name's got out there, I've gotten more calls. Just for the 2024 season, I did 94 tracks just myself. So, that's a lot to put on one dog. Not that it can't be done, but that's a lot to put on one dog, especially when she's only 23 pounds. So it was a great move. I'm glad I've got both dogs, and they've both got their own little characteristics and things that they do well, and things that's training purposes I have to work on. So
right. So it sounds like you definitely did a lot of homework. So one factor was how well they would be at tracking, and then like you said, the other factor is, was it a good fit for my family? So if someone were looking to maybe get into this, what kind of things should they look for if they're looking to see if a certain breed is a good tracking dog? Like, what would you recommend characteristics of a breed to look for?
Well, to be completely honest with you, it's not necessarily a breed. I know there's some guys out there that might disagree. Everybody's got their own opinion, but what I mean by that is every dog out there has the potential to be a tracking dog. It's just a matter of, does the dog want to track? You can have the coolest looking bloodhound. You can have the best looking German Shepherd. You can have an AKC papered lab. But if they don't have the drive and the want to track, they're not going to. And so, you know, again, I think the biggest number one factor is you have to find a dog that's going to fit your family. What dog's going to fit your family? What lifestyle do you have? I mean, let's just face it. This winter has been a very tough one for us. And I can tell you right now that these two have been driving me absolutely nuts all winter long. But it's because they're a working dog, and they go from the 3 months of tracking deer every day to a complete halt and 10 inches of snow on the ground. And you have to be able to take that into factor. So anybody that's new getting into it, I really think that they just need to do their homework on which dog is going to fit their lifestyle, and then kind of decide from there what it is that they want to do with it. Is it going to be a dog that you're going to track a couple times a year with, that you're going to do for friends and family, or is it going to be something you're actually going to get into a business with? And I'll be honest, when I first got into this, I knew that I was going to get into it for the right reasons, but I never expected to be as busy as I am. And I'm not even one of the busiest. I'm kind of in the middle of the pack when it comes to the Michigan trackers. I'm kind of right in the middle compared to some guys out there. So, yeah, it's just a matter of what breed is going to fit your family.
Wow. Okay. So that's some good advice there. So, and sorry guys, if you have questions, just chime in. So what kind of work do you have to put? So let's talk about the initial start of training. Like, what does that look like? How do you, obviously you did the test when you went to select the dog, you kind of, you know, played the game there, who followed the deer leg the longest, but now you've got your dog and you want to get started. How do you initialize that training?
Yeah. So I started out real early on. I started out with liver drags, and really the liver drags is it's just the principle of learning tracking, period. So liver is a high and sweet smell. It's easy for the dogs to track. It's easy for them to scent pretty quick off the bat. So started out with real short drags, 10, 20 yards most, straight lines. Just get the principle of tracking down, allow the dog to figure out what it is you're trying to tell them. Eventually, we transition from that into hooves and maybe a hide. And you might have a little bit of that liver still involved, but eventually we want to take the liver away. We want to take the blood away. We want to take the hide away, and we want to just track with a hoof. Now, a lot of people do know this, but there's a lot of people that don't. Eventually, what we do is we teach our dogs to track what's called the interdigital gland, which is in the hoof. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that before or not. Just above the hoof, there's a gland that sits up inside of there. It's called, again, the interdigital gland. And as the deer is wounded, they secrete from that gland a waxy-like substance. And so what that does is, as the deer is shot, wherever it may be in the woods, they take off running. They start secreting from that gland. And so they're going to continually distress scent off of that. Now, there is other factors that we do think. And again, it's a science, but I don't think anybody's really done any, actual tracking statistics off of it. But, it's just like a human. When a human takes off running, the dogs are able to track them while they're dropping dander off their skin cells. They're dropping hair follicles. Their breath increases, so their respiratory system spitting out some saliva. There's a multitude of things. And so, again, the training purposes are, we have tracking shoes that we will actually put the hooves under, and we use a little blood, and we start training the dogs to track on that. Eventually, again, take that blood away to where now we're doing 900 yard plus tracks on just hoof only, and allowing the dog to figure out those puzzles. We're adding in the 90-degree turns. We're adding wound beds into that scenario. We're just trying to get the dogs to work through, and really they have to be a detective on their own. You have to let them figure out a puzzle and allow them to make mistakes, and allow them to figure out what it is that they're supposed to be tracking. And I see Matt's put a little thing up there. Yes, it is the declining health pheromone. It's that stress scent that they're putting out. Matt's a tracker here in Michigan as well. So, but yeah, it's just getting the dogs to track on that pheromone and allowing them to figure that scent out.
Okay. So the training sounds like it's pretty rigorous, and I'm assuming all off season. Now, you put the dogs in different scenarios. Do you factor in weather too? Like, with a little bit of snow on the ground, do you do practice tracks with that, or like just after rain or anything like that? Is that a factor in the training?
Yeah, so we do a lot of different scenarios. We try to throw a bunch of different factors in there. We'll do road crossings. We'll do 2-track crossings, hot days, windy days, wet days. Snow is not so much I don't really like training in the snow because it's snow, right? It's cold out. Nobody really wants to train in that. But that's the tail end of the season for us too. So the dogs aren't really interested in my training tracks after they've been on, 40 or plus more actual deer that they found. They don't have any interest in tracking a deer at that time. So it can be a little difficult, but we do try to put out a lot of different factors, throw them a curveball once in a while. Early stages of a training, you want the dog to succeed. We don't want to try to fail our dogs, but we want to give them that puzzle to create that thinking power for them to decide what it is that they're going to do. Because again, when we're out in the real world, I know when a training track, I know where that track goes. I know where my markers are. I know exactly where I turn my right degree 90 turn. But in a real life situation, I have no idea where that deer went. And so I'm relying on the dog. Now, is there sign from time to time that we're going to see? Yeah, there is. But we have to remember that we have to trust our dogs. So really, honestly, the first year that I did this, I tried my best, but it's very difficult. You have to learn your dog, and you have to learn to read your dog and the signs and the cues that your dog will throw off. And each of my dogs is different. My little dog versus my big dog, they both throw different signs and cues. You can tell when you're close to a deer. You can tell when they've turned. You can tell when they've lost the scent. So it's really learning to read your dog. And there's, again, during the training process is just making sure that you're learning how your dog reacts to a certain scenario.
Awesome. You guys have any questions? I don't want to
No, you're good.
monopolize the conversation.
I'm just sitting here listening and learning. That just is all
Yep.
new to me. Usually I'm the tracking dog, so.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something we get a lot of times. So you asked, I was going to throw this out there. You asked a question of, do we train during like rain and whatnot? I'm going to ask you guys a question. When is the best time to go out and check your trail cameras? What have you heard in the past? When is the best time to check your trail cameras?
In the rain.
Well, they always say when it's raining
Yeah.
And why is that?
because they claim that it washes the scent away.
Okay. So that was something that I always heard growing up in deer hunting. That was something that was always told to me, go check your trail cameras when it's raining out because it's going to wash your scent away. And I learned this early on in my tracking career that even though you guys don't see the blood, even though it's rained, it's difficult. We don't see that, but the dog actually increases the scent for the dog, so it makes it easier. So we've done numerous tracks where we don't see any blood. It's rained overnight. It's 16 hours old, and the dogs absolutely have no problem. Days that we have a real struggle with tracking is on the days when it's really hot, it's really dry, and it's really windy out. And that's because you guys have seen on hot, windy days, there's turkey buzzards flying up in the sky. They're high in the sky. There's no clouds in the sky. The turkey buzzards are up there because the draft from the ground is all being sucked straight up off the ground into the sky. And it's drafting all that scent straight up into the air. And that's exactly what's happening. So when we bring our dogs out, if it's ever been a day like that, it can be very difficult on the dogs. So that's a big factor too. We try to train to those circumstances. Now, granted, we don't get a lot of those days here in Michigan when it comes to October, but we do from time to time have them.
We're getting a wicked
Yeah, I think
echo.
I had heard that it depends on the type of rain. Like if it's a heavy downpour, it's supposed to wash your scent away. But if it's like a mist or a sprinkle, that actually the rain can hold the scent better. So like as far as deer hunting, they have a better chance of actually smelling you if there's a little bit of moisture in the air. So okay, that makes sense.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, and
Sorry,
then the
Dennis.
same
Go
goes.
ahead.
Same goes for like snow. I mean, we've done a couple tracks now where this last season we did one that it had snowed 4+ inches overnight, and there was absolutely no sign. You couldn't even see the deer tracks from the night before, and the dogs have no problem. And it's amazing to watch because, again, as a handler and as the hunter, you're walking behind this, again, 23-pound dog. For me, and you're watching the dog work, and you're like, there's absolutely no way that they're scenting anything on this ground. There's 4 inches of snow, the wind's blowing, it's been like this all night. And we actually came up on that deer. I had no idea it was a deer to begin with. She was standing on top of it, sniffing it, turned around and looked at me like, hey, I found it. And I thought she was standing on like an anthill or something. I could just see the mound of snow. She was standing on the deer. So it's times like that too, that it just blows your mind that the dogs have the ability to do what they do. But that's just, again, that just comes with time, and you got to learn to trust your dog and be willing to allow them to show you what they know.
I'm just curious, Calvin, do you guys like charge a flat rate, or do you charge on like how long the track job is?
So every tracker out there is different, and I will just leave it at that. So everybody out there has a different, whether it's a fee or whether it's a donation or tips, however they go about it. I've decided with my service where I'm at, I do for tips and donations. We have a lot of people that hunt in our area, but they may not be able to afford to pay for somebody. There's a lot of people that, feed their families that use that deer season long. And I feel it's a well worth service for me to provide to somebody that doesn't have the ability to pay for that. So if you call me up and say, hey man, I don't have a lot of money and I really need this deer, I feed my family, by all means, I'll jump in my car and I'll drive right to you with the dog, and we'll find your deer and we'll do the best we can. So I do it for tips and donations. Like I said, I don't charge with a fee by any means. I've had people throw me deer jerky. I've had jams and jellies. I've had all sorts of different stuff, and I'm okay with that. I honestly, once you do this once and you watch behind the dog and you watch what they can do, I mean, it's a lot of fun to me, and I just enjoy it. So I'm not in it for the money.
That's cool. I'm old school myself. I believe in the barter system for sure.
I do a lot of bartering in my day. Yep.
So that's pretty cool. You get to be there for a lot of special moments for different hunters. Like you said, their biggest buck, their first deer, whatever. What's the feedback you get from the hunters? Because I'm sure, like I said, none of us have ever had a track job done. But, I would think that would be fun to watch the dogs work here, especially because you're panicked, your anxiety's high because you want to recover this deer. But what do the hunters tell you when they watch your dogs work and find this deer? It's got to be, I think it'd be pretty remarkable.
It's a mixed, you get a mixed emotions. I mean, so you got a lot of guys, old school guys, probably the ones that we see a lot of that are really doubtful of it. And that's just because they don't know it. They've never seen it before. They've never heard of it. And those are the guys that they're calling me from a landline. They don't have a cell phone. They don't have Facebook. They got your number from their son or their grandson. And those are the ones that, I'm not saying they're doubtful, but they have their reasons behind why they don't think it's going to work. And so when you bring the dog out and it actually truly does work, or they see the dog work, they're pretty excited about it. And most of the time, those guys are just shaking their head like, I didn't believe that. There's just no way. The other side of it is you'll get the guys that have seen it before. And probably the number one thing that I like to point out is everybody's dog is different. Everybody's dog is going to work different. Everybody's dog is going to track a different way. And so just because you had a dog downstate doesn't mean that my dog's going to track the same way as some other guy's dog does. So I set expectations right up front when I set up a track. I'll tell the dog, or you tell the people, this is how this dog is going to work. And again, I have 2, so I'll tell them each of their characteristics. This is how this dog works. Or depending on which one I have, I'll tell them the other one. But you just set your expectations up so they know what they're getting into. And then in the end, when either A, the deer is dead and you find it, obviously they're joyful and they're happy and they're excited. Or if I told them, hey, this is what the dog is going to look like if I believe your deer is not dead. And when the dog does that, they usually turn around with that look like, nah, that was that sign you told me about, wasn't it? And so they have that expectation already of what is happening with that track. So there's really nothing to hide. You're not I don't hide anything from anybody. I'm truthful and honest with everybody. We're not perfect. Any team that's out there is going to tell you they're perfect is lying to you. Everybody's got something to learn, and dogs can have off days. Just because my dog didn't find your deer doesn't make it a bad dog. It just maybe had an off day. You know, there's times where, you know, you wouldn't think the dog would struggle, but everybody's got an off day. Some days people don't feel good. Some days people don't want to get up and go to work. Well, dogs can have the same thing. And so that's where we just have to be upfront and honest with people and just give them that expectation of what we expect for the dog to show, so that when they see one time or the other, whatever that may be, they know what's going on.
Okay. So let's talk about from the hunter aspect of it. So we take a shot and maybe we know right away, oh, that wasn't a good shot. Or we get down, we start to track it, and we're struggling. Talk to us about some do's and don'ts as a hunter when it comes to tracking, where it'll hinder the tracking job of your dog, or like worst case scenarios. What should we do and what should we not do when tracking?
Yeah. So probably the number one thing is if we go with the fact that you know you made a horrible shot, and it all depends on what is a horrible shot. Everybody's got their own depiction of what a horrible shot is, but let's just say for the sake of easy talk for tracking, let's say you're sitting in a tree stand and the deer's, you know, X amount of yards away, and you make that shot, and as soon as you let go, you realize that the deer was quartering towards you just a little bit. Your arrow hit back, you punched it right through the belly, and the deer runs off 15 yards, stops, stands there all hunched up, and then slowly walks off. That's pretty indicative of a gut shot, and everybody knows that's a horrible shot. There's no denying that it's not a great shot. So when you know you've made a bad shot, the number one thing you need to do in that scenario is figure out what your wait time is going to be. How long do you need to wait before you can potentially go after that deer? Now, early in the season, we tell people a lot of times 8 to 12 hours for a gut shot deer. And that's just so that deer has time to expire. As the early season, when that weather is warmer, they do expire faster. Now, a gut shot deer is not going to die from blood loss. They're not going to die from, you know, some miracle that their lung got punctured in the process. It was the fact that they're dying from infection. It's sepsis that's killing that deer. And so that deer just needs time. So knowing what your wait time is very important for hunters. And I think that's one of the things that we try to do a lot of promoting, you know, what to do after track. And so if you know what your wait time should be, you let that deer lay. If you have the notion that, hey, that deer went over there and I watched it bed down, and you want to go after that deer in the morning, by all means, I'm all for that. If you've seen it bed down and you know it's 100 yards away, go after that deer in the morning. But what I do tell people is if that deer isn't in that spot and you don't see any blood, you need to back out and call a dog. Because what happens is a lot of the times you go in there, man, that deer was right here. I know he was. And you start searching around, and you're walking and you're walking and you're walking, and you're searching that whole area. And finally, maybe you find the bed. But what does everybody do? They go and inspect the bed. They sit down in it. They stand in it. They walk through it. Now we're starting to search. We're broadcasting out. We're looking for more blood. Well, gut shot deer don't always bleed. And if they do, they don't bleed that well. And so now we're searching around and we're looking for blood, and we're walking this way and we're walking that way. And we went 50 yards this way, and then we turned around at 50 yards the other way. And so eventually what happens is you've picked that scent up from that deer on your boots, and you've scattered it in 100 different directions. And then you finally decide after 3 hours of grid searching with your buddies that, you know what, maybe I do need a dog, and you call me. Now, we as trackers know the expectation. We know that that's going to happen, and we're okay with that. But what needs to happen is it needs to be an upfront and honest conversation. Say, hey, look, this is what I did. I went this way. I walked this way. I checked this area. Now I know when I get out there, it's not for me so I can say, oh, you shouldn't have done that. It's so when the dog starts working and she goes 50 yards and stops and turns around and looks at me, I know her reaction of that line stop is probably because you had that when you walked that way. So just trying to get that expectation of what are wait times, what to do after the track. Grid searching is really the biggest factor that happens a lot of the times. Guys go out there and they grid search for way too long. They try to pick up the trail in too many directions, And then they call us in and want our dogs to be a miracle worker. And the fact of the matter is that our dogs are only as good as your shot. I can't find it, ultimately the dog can't find a deer that's not dead. And so having that notion of that right off the bat, like, yeah, that was a bad shot. That opportunity to find your deer is what we really look for. Now, that's not to say most trackers will tell you if you have the ability to go out, you're following blood, you've gone 150 yards with good blood still, and you think that deer should be close by, continue tracking your deer. But once you get to that point of loss and you're not sure where the deer went, you're not really sure if you're going to be able to pick up the scent or the trail in a different direction, then you need to mark that spot and back out and try to call in a dog. Now, realizing obviously during the busy season, it can be difficult sometimes to find a tracker, and we all understand that. But the more that you mess up that scent line, the more that you muck it up, as we say, it's just going to make it harder for the dog. And ultimately, in the end, it's just going to make that track, what could have been a 20-minute track for the dog, now takes 2 hours because they've got to work through your grid search. If that makes sense.
So when is the best time to call? Like, do you want to give it, I guess I don't know how to word this question, but what advice would you give maybe to someone that's tracking when they should maybe start thinking about it's time to call, a tracker in?
So ultimately, the number one thing is if you made a bad shot and you know that you're really not going to find this deer because of X, Y, or Z, you need to call. And the biggest thing is because the earlier you call, the better chance you're going to have of getting a tracker. And like I said, during that busy season, the last 2 weeks of October and the first 2 weeks of November, my phone might ring 30, 40, 50 times a day. If you're at the tail end, if you've grid searched all day long, you shot it at 8 and you've grid searched till 5, and then you call me at 6 o'clock and say, hey, I shot a deer 12 hours ago, I need your help. You're now past that. You're at the back of the line. You've ultimately waited till the last minute to try to get that track now. And I might be booked up that night and for the next day already. So the earlier, the better. And not only that, but I tell people all the time, if you have any indication whatsoever that you're just really not sure of your shot, pictures of your arrow, pictures of the blood, and any type of story you can give me of what happened with that deer. It's not a definitive thing. We're never, ever going to say we're going to be 100% correct. But a lot of the times, if you can give us a little of that information, a lot of trackers can tell you where they think you hit the deer and how long you should wait. And that's just going off of, years of experience, how many tracks people have gone on. We never try to boast or say that we're better than anybody else, but as trackers, I'll bet the 4 of you combined have probably only been on 100 to 150 tracks combined in your entire life. I've done almost 300 in 4 years. And so that just goes to show the more times you've been out, the more things that you see, the more experience you have. It gives you that little bit of a boost to say, yeah, this is kind of what we're thinking. This is why we believe this is where the deer was hit, or this is why we believe you should wait this long.
Okay. Yeah, that's good advice. Especially probably in an area where there's not as many trackers too. You wanna get yourself at the front of the line. So that's a great point. Guys, do you have any questions or anything?
Taking notes, man.
Right.
So I guess so before we close out, let's tell us a tracking story that sticks out in your head. What was it about that track that just maybe made it special or frustrating or whatever?
So probably this year, I'll tell you one from this year because it was probably one of my favorite tracks from this season, and it actually ended up being our longest track of the season. But we got a call from a guy. He said his brother had shot a deer. He was pretty certain that he had gut shot it, but he really wasn't, perfect on the shot. He didn't really know, didn't really have a lot for me to go off of. He just said, I think he gut shot it, but I don't know. He didn't have any pictures of the arrow. He didn't have any blood. So we ended up making plans to meet up. Got out there that day, and he had shot it with a crossbow. And I got out to where he'd shot it at, and he had the arrow still on the ground, and I picked it up. And as soon as I looked at it, I knew it was gut shot. And as a tracker, we usually get pretty excited about those because those are, about a 95% success rate. We're going to find those deer just because it's very easy for the dogs to follow, and that is a lethal shot. The deer is going to die. So got the dog set and started out, and these guys had spent some time looking, and they really didn't find anything. They couldn't even, they knew a general direction when the deer took off. He knew a general direction where the deer went, but he didn't have anything to go off of. So dog takes off in the general direction that he said. We go probably 150 yards or so, and lo and behold, there's some blood on an oak leaf. And so I yelled back to him and said, hey, I found some blood. We continued on, and we probably went another 250 yards and found some more blood. And then we went another 100 yards and found some more blood. But then I started seeing in the ground where the leaves were all kicked up. And there was just, you could tell there was something that happened in that area. But, I'm a turkey hunter. I've been in the woods, again, a long time, and it didn't look like turkey scratching. It just didn't look like that. Well, as I'm inspecting, as I'm going past it, I noticed there's blood droplets and all these leaves. And so I'm kind of starting to think like what I think is going on. And you guys may be picking up on it too. But so we continue. We're actually at the top of this huge ridge. We start following the edge of the bowl around. We're coming around the corner. And all of a sudden, the dog wants to take me down this giant hill. And I'm like, absolutely no way. Like I'm not going down that thing. There's no way that deer went down that. And at this point, we're probably, I'm going to guess probably 600 yards into this track. And so finally, it's like, okay, fine. If you're really that interested in going down there, I guess we're going. And so she starts down the bottom of the hill, and lo and behold, halfway down it, I see a drop of blood. And we get down to the bottom, and we kind of go through this swampy portion. And now we're dropping into a creek bottom, and we're going over this little ridge. And I mean, this sounds like this is a fast story, right? This is not fast. Like, even though the dog's working pretty quick, this is taking us some time. And so eventually she takes me to the edge of the river, and she is like adamantly, like, I am going swimming in the river. And I just thought, the deer may have gone in there, but you're 23 pounds. The river's faster than you are. There's no way you're going to swim, and I'm not swimming with you. It's, like the beginning of November. So I waited a little bit, and we kind of searched around that area. And I thought maybe the deer, because I've had on occasion where the deer will actually backtrack. They get to the river, realize they really don't want to get in the river, and they'll backtrack out, and they'll maybe follow the riverbank down or, something along those lines. So I did a few things with her, walked up in the bank, and she was adamant, like, I'm going to the river and we're going swimming. And it was deep enough and it was way too cold. I obviously couldn't get in at that time. So I thought, okay, so pretty good chance the deer cross the river. So this wasn't something easy. It wasn't an easy feat. We didn't just jump in the vehicle, drive down to the local bridge and just cross it. We had to drive quite a distance out and around. We get to the other side, and there's this big overlook that sits up kind of on this hill where we were on the other side of the river now. And so we're standing up on there, and we decided that we should probably walk down to where we thought the deer would have crossed, and we'll check that side of the river. So I take the dog down there, and I walk her up in the bank, and she's just like, what do you want me to do with that? I'm not really sure what's going on here. So it was pretty obvious to me that there was no deer that came back up onto that riverbank. So we walked up and down the river to the other direction. We got back up on top of the ridge where the overlook was, and I'm standing there talking with the hunter and his brother, and I'm telling them, well, our only option at this point is to go back on the opposite side of the river, and we really just need to walk the bank down in either direction and just see if she hits on something. But she was very adamant that she wanted to go swimming. So we're standing there talking, and lo and behold, I just happened to look down into the river, and all you could see was a bloated up belly and one tine sticking out of the river. That deer had gotten the river, and it died in the river, and it floated downriver probably, I'm going to say, a good 150 to 175 yards. And again, the story sounds fast, but it was our longest track of the season. It was almost 3,000 yards we tracked that deer from start to finish. And I have a video that's pretty cool of the dog. She walks up on it. She actually swims out into the river, jumps up on, stands on the deer, she's barking at it, and she's pretty excited. But, it's just something like that. But after you have the dog do that, and these guys had never used the dog before, they had no idea what they were getting themselves into. At one point, I think they were a half a mile behind me, calling like, "Hey, where are you?" So it was a pretty cool track. It was a lot of fun, and that's something that those guys are going to go back and tell their buddies about using the track and just spread the word on that. So
that's cool.
Oh, that's amazing. Definitely got to learn your dog there for sure for that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
one more question for you, and this will be a fun one. I think it'll be fun for me, anyways. So obviously you're asking the hunter a lot of questions and everything. So my question for you is with archery hunting, because I'm assuming that's probably the majority of your tracks. But do you find more of your tracks to be from a fixed blade broadhead or an expandable broadhead?
Well, it's funny you asked that question. So over the last 4 years of my tracking career, I've kept detail and great detail of that. And I find out every year what they shot the deer with. Was it a compound or a crossbow? Was they using a fixed blade or a mechanical blade? And I keep track of all that stuff. Now, I do have statistics. I don't know if I have anything with me on hand, but I do keep track of all that stuff. If I remember correctly, last season, my number one track was a crossbow with a mechanical broadhead. That was what we tracked the most of. Now, this is a discussion that a lot of people will get into. Us as trackers have a little bit different philosophy than hunters do on this. I get guys that ask me all the time, what is your go-to broadhead? What do you think is the best? What I think is the best is a well-placed arrow. That's what I think is the best. Because let's face it, you can shoot a deer, not that it's legal, but you can shoot a deer with a field point and you can kill that deer as long as it's placed in the right spot. So a well-placed arrow will kill a deer every time. Now your error of margin, that will be a fixed blade broadhead will be your best option. And that's just because if you've got that error of margin, and if you ever hit a bone of some sort, and everybody's seen or heard somebody that shot a deer in the shoulder or shot him high in the back strap or happened to hit a leg, a mechanical blade will fail every time. And so a fixed blade won't in most cases. And so again, this is a hot topic. We could sit here all night long and discuss back and forth, but what I tell a lot of people is after about 6 or 7 years, and I have a lot of data that I can go off of, come back to me, and we can have that same conversation, because the data won't lie. I mean, the data will tell us what I personally track the most of and what I see the most of. But again, a crossbow, we really track a lot more crossbows up, but I think that's just because crossbows are more popular now. There's a lot of things we could say are crossbows are more popular. Some guys think that most guys take bad shots with a crossbow because it's like a rifle, or they think it's like a rifle. There is something to be said about that, but really it's just being patient. Be patient with your equipment. Take a shot that you're comfortable with and not a rush shot. Everybody thinks that, well, if I don't take the shot now, the deer's just going to go away and I'm never going to get another opportunity at it. And so I might as well do it now. Well, unfortunately, in that case, if you take that shot, it's a bad shot and you don't recover the deer, the chances of you seeing that deer can be none.
Absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, I figured that'd be a fun question. So we got a comment here, Islander fishing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we get asked that question a lot. A lot of guys ask about broadheads and the different ones. And to be honest with you guys, like I said, I was fortunate enough last year to harvest 2 great deer. I shot a 5-point that scored 110 inches. He was 7.5 years old. And then I shot a split brow 9-point that was 130 inches. I shot both of them with different broadheads. I shot one with a mechanical and I shot one with a fixed blade. And it wasn't because one was better than the other. It's just that's what I had in the quiver, and that's what I used. So I don't really have a personal preference at this point. I think it's just, again, it's a well-placed shot.
Yeah, absolutely. So Eileen here says, "Hey Calvin, tell them about Willow's attitude at the end of the track after finding the deer."
Yeah, so Willow is the small one. Obviously, she's very, very opinionated on whose deer it is at the end of the track. She will let you know for sure. She has a little bit of aggression towards the deer, and that's just because she puts the work in to find that deer, and she wants people to know that it's her deer. And I have to usually tell hunters, don't get too close to her while she's tracking, and once she finds the deer, because there's a potential that you might lose a finger or two. So. But she just puts the work in to find that deer, and it's the end. You know, she usually grabs it. She'll pull on the hair. She'll pull on the fur. She'll have her way with it, and that's just her way of you know, it's her reward at the end. That's just what I have to let her do, just to give her that reward, and that's really the driving factor for her. I mean, it's one of those things. Once they get the itch, it's just like all of us. We go turkey hunting, and you hear the first gobble in the woods in the morning. It's no different for the dog. I mean, once they get that first little kind of tongue of the deer hide for the season, man, it's game on. They know what it is, and they're ready to rock and roll. So,
Yeah. It's a lot of instinct built up in that dog. So awesome.
Yeah.
Well, guys, do you have any more questions or comments for Calvin before we call it a night?
No, he covered pretty much everything I was going to ask.
I'd like to throw a few more things out there if you guys don't mind, real quick.
Go for it.
So, so Michigan Deer Tracking Network, and a lot of the, you know, I think just before we got on, you guys had asked, like, there's a list out there for people to call. You know, there's a lot of guys that don't know that. I mean, obviously Facebook and technology and all that kind of stuff has become known and people know about it, but there's a lot of people that still don't. There's a group in Michigan called Michigan Deer Tracking Network. It's a group of guys. There's 42 trackers on that list in the state of Michigan. And that's a group of people that train throughout the year. They are part of that list because they want to track. They're doing, you know, a lot of guys are doing 50 plus tracks a season. Some of them upwards of 230 tracks a season. It's a group of people that are doing tracking for the right reasons. They're out there trying to help hunters throughout the entire season. And I will tell you, most of those people are giving up hunting completely just to track deer because that's the passion they have for it. So if the followers out there have not heard of them, Michigan Deer Tracking Network, go on their Facebook page, check them out. We do have an app. If you go on Google or Android, you can download the app. App's kind of cool. Turn your location on. It'll drop you in your location. And then what you do with that app is you literally just scroll to the next closest person. So let's say you live up in Sheboygan County and you're downstate somewhere hunting one day and you happen to shoot a deer and you're like, man, I think I'm going to need a dog. You turn your location on, you go to the app, you open it up, boom, it drops you right into the area and it'll show you the trackers that are within your location. So it's a really cool thing that the Michigan Deer Tracking Network has. You can go in there. There's some question and answer type, you know, things, some of the things that you guys have asked tonight that maybe hunters don't know. They can go in there and read on those. We usually tell people, pull your app up, go through those questions, read those. That way, by the time I get there, you won't have any questions for me and we can just go find the deer. But some of the other things that we do and at the Michigan Deer Tracking Network is we do a youth giveaway every season. And last year we were able to give away $9,000 in prizes, which included some crossbows, some compound bows. We gave a couple rifles away for a doe hunt. So, you know, it's not just the fact that we're doing deer tracking. It's not just the fact that we're out there helping hunters. We're doing a lot of things in the public that we're trying to promote tracking and we're trying to promote youth hunting because, as we all know, that is declining. And so that's kind of one of the passions that we as the network have picked up and said we really want to put some effort into. So, you know, just alone, I kind of talked to this a little bit to you guys prior to getting this launched up. But like I said, there was 44 teams last year in the network. Out of those 44 teams, we did 3,182 tracks. That's a pretty astronomical number. out of those 3,000, we ended up recovering 1,336 deer. So pretty good. I should say we recovered 1,312 deer and 24 bear. So there were some bears that were recovered last season as well. So, and that's just all on the efforts of, again, a lot of guys are tracking for donations. There's a lot of guys that are, they're just out there doing this. And it's just because we enjoy following our dogs. And, you know, we a lot of the time say that we're deer trackers, but in all reality, our dogs are the deer trackers. We're just woods walkers. So, and just to go along with that, if there's anybody out there that's listening or maybe goes back on and listens, that's looking to maybe help sponsor some of our Michigan Deer Tracking Network giveaway stuff, by all means, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to see what you guys can do to help us out. And, you know, we're just trying to, like I said, we're just trying to promote youth hunting in the state of Michigan and keep things on the up and up.
That's awesome. I would love to hear that. Yeah. Go ahead, Dennis. Were you going to say something?
No, I thought you was. I was listening. Did you freeze?
Yeah, I think I froze for a second. I'm back now. So, all right. Well, hey, Calvin, it's been awesome having you on tonight. We definitely learned a lot. And yeah, I think I'm freezing again.
Yeah, you're froze up, but we can still hear you.
Maybe.
Too late.
Yeah.
Technology's great.
Isn't it? You got us back now, huh?
I have no idea.
We can hear you.
Yeah, I think I'm back.
Oh,
Can you
there
guys
you
hear
are.
me?
Yeah, I see your lips moving.
All right. Well, yeah, I
Okay.
appreciate you guys having me on. You know, if anybody's out there that's looking to get into deer tracking or has questions about deer tracking or whatever, you guys are more than welcome to reach out to me. You guys can reach out to the Michigan Deer Tracking Network. A lot of the guys are willing to talk, willing to chat, willing to help you out however they can. So, again, I appreciate you guys having me on, and you know, maybe in the future we can put together some data. I can put everything together for you guys, and we can do a little chat on broadheads, and you know, I've got some pretty interesting stuff, and it's going to be cool to see, like you said, in the 6-year period. It'll be kind of cool just to sit down and look at it. Will it mean a lot? It may not, but it's just kind of cool to sit down and look at and take a look at what kind of data we can collect. The other cool part for me is I collect a lot of that data. I'll keep track of distance-wise, yardage, and it's kind of cool to see, like when you track a deer and it's a gut shot. You know, there's a pretty broad range of how far that deer could go, but within reason, it's usually within 75 to 100 yards of what every deer does. So that's just kind of the cool stuff with the data, and that helps us train too. That's a lot of our training aspects too. We go back and look at that and use that for training. So
Yeah, that'd be cool to have a dog that goes and tracks deer for me.
yeah, they're a lot of fun. If you guys ever get a chance to follow the dog and see it happen and see it work, it's truly something to see. I mean, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, I'd like to see that one time, but I'd rather see it be somebody else. I don't want to be the one taking the bad shot.
Maybe you can go up to Tim's house and let him shoot one, and then you can call the dog up.
Oh, what were you guys saying about me when I was gone?
No.
Well, hey, Calvin, thanks a lot for your time, for all the information. Definitely learned a lot tonight. So, yeah, like you said, the number one thing is practice, 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 good shot placement, and you can possibly avoid having to get a dog tracker. But if you do, you got a lot of information. You can contact Calvin if you're in his area, or check out Michigan Deer Tracking Network to find out who's available in your area. So, Calvin, thanks again for joining us, and thank you all watching at home for joining us tonight. So we'll see you here I think next Wednesday we'll be back talking turkey, right, Dennis?
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
All right. As
Perfect.
we get closer to the opener, we'll have some discussion. So thanks again, everybody, and we will see you next week.